Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Tuesday, October 14th, 2025, and today we are going to be talking about the state of Kansas and redrawing their potential congressional maps for the 2026 midterm elections. As we saw in a video earlier today talking about North Carolina, as Republicans in that state hoped to redraw their maps for Donald Trump, and it looks like they in fact will, Kansas recently made an announcement that they are going to see a newly drawn congressional map for 2026 as the Republican governor and the president of the Kansas State Senate have come forth to the voters and said, we are going to hold a special session to redraw the maps for 2026. But the Republicans in Kansas seem to have miscalculated, at least a little bit, in understanding what their state actually wants and what the voters and also those in the state legislature would actually approve of in terms of a 2026 congressional map here. In the state of Kansas, Democrats currently hold 1 out of the 4 seats. The 3 Republican seats are safe for the GOP. They're winning them by 38, 19, and 30 points. These are safe for the Republican Party, but the singular district that Democrats currently hold on to is a swing district. It's Kansas's 3rd district. Sharice Davids won by an 11-point margin in 2024. In the district itself, though, Kamala Harris only was able to win it across the district by 4 percentage points. But in the 2024 cycle, Sharice Davids really showed that she outperforms Kamala Harris and just generally speaking is a very strong Democrat in this race. And Republicans are quite scared because they know that if they can give Donald Trump an additional seat in Kansas, it would remove one of the highest ranking Democrats from Kansas as well. Remove her out of contention for a future bid as well, potentially governor or some other statewide role that they know that she might be able to springboard into using the congressional seat here, and it would ultimately help the Republicans on the national level. But one thing that already just stands directly in opposition to a new map being implemented are the types of Republicans in the state legislature that represent a county, in specific here in Kansas, as what we know of in Kansas's 3rd district as Johnson County. A county that in the time they did the redraws for 2022 through 2030, the Republicans in that county mandated that in the redraw, the county must not be split up. The only way that there is a congressional district in Kansas with a Republican advantage in the 3rd is if you split Johnson County. Why? Because in the last presidential election, as is the case on the House level as well, in the state of Kansas, you will find that Johnson County voted for Kamala Harris by roughly 8 points. It's a Democratic Party voting area that if you were to split up the county here, you would find that, yes, you could draw 4 Republican seats. But the Republicans in this area would be angry. And although the Republicans do have a working supermajority, meaning that they could override the Democratic Governor Laura Kelly's veto on the congressional map here, they may not get the supermajority passing the map. Undoubtedly, they will get the majority, and a map will hypothetically look like it's going to be implemented. But if the governor vetoes it, and they don't have the ability to override the veto, the map doesn't take place. And Democrats would hold on to the seat that they have in Kansas. But another workaround to, let's say the Republicans are convinced, and Donald Trump himself flies to Kansas in the way that J.D. Vance went to Indiana and pleaded with the Republicans who seemed like they wanted to hold out at initial glance. Even if it got through the state legislature, Kansas has a Democratic Supreme Court. One of the few Republican states where that is the case, but because Laura Kelly has been in office since 2019, she's had the ability, alongside the former Democratic governor, to appoint the majority of the justices in the state of Kansas. And one thing that might remind you of Kansas is that in 2022, the Democratic court also ruled that Kansas does not have the constitutional authority to overrule a gerrymander. They actually were brought forth a case by the Democrats after Republicans put forth this map because it actually looked like Sharice Davids might end up losing because in 2020, it was a more solid Democratic district. Republicans drew it in a way that made it so this district potentially would have been more competitive, but Sharice Davids, being as popular as she is and as well-known and well-versed in the district, ended up winning, by 12 points in 2022. But the point actually was that Republicans made it. So Republicans would have the advantage in a normal year. Obviously, against a stellar Democrat, you're never going to have the advantage. But in the district, it was drawn in such a way that it reached the Kansas Supreme Court. But the Democrats said no. In a ruling of 4-3, the Kansas Democrats sided with the 2 Republicans on the court and said that a gerrymander is permitted in Kansas because the Constitution does not explicitly prohibit it. However, in the most recent appointment by Governor Laura Kelly, and this appointment that is going to be here for a while, is that this decision from the Democratic governor is that this most recent Supreme Court appointee is replacing one of the two Democrats that sided with the Republicans on the court case in 2022, meaning that the three Democrats who said gerrymandering is wrong in Kansas, an additional Democrat has joined the bench who many people believe would side with the Democrats on the issue in favor of the party if Republicans were to redraw the maps. Because there is not an appetite right now from the Democrats to see a newly drawn map in the way that there was in 2022. A lot of it was fear that with an unpopular midterm with Biden, that Sharice Davids, being in a redder district, would find herself in a more competitive race and ultimately lose. But what they quickly learned was that she's not a losing candidate, and she's not someone who's going to go down easy in Kansas's third. So they gave up the court case. Even with the new Supreme Court, there's no indication that Democrats aim to redraw the maps. But if Republicans do decide to do it, they face those two major obstacles. On one end, the Republicans already didn't draw the map in a way because Johnson County needed to be preserved. But in the event that they get through the supermajority, the Democrats have a working majority on the Supreme Court. And the most recent justice that left office is one that sided with the Republicans in the past, and the most recent appointee is likely to side with the Democrats. And we're entering a different day and age of electoral politics where the justices that might have previously said that this is something that, should not be ruled upon, or that Democrats and Republicans should not be drawing maps in X, Y, and Z, we are now finding ourselves where, as the president of the United States goes from state to state to go to these Republicans and say, give me more seats in the House of Representatives, a lot of these justices have changed their tunes. That in the time that it is today, in order to meet the moment, they must rule in a partisan fashion. Even if the judicial branch may not have been built for that, that is the way that it is being done. And thinking about just all that we've seen considered and really come about in this redistricting war that we've seen across this country, it is the Republicans that have almost consistently had the upper hand. It is them who had Texas to do first, then Missouri, now, Indiana. Today we talked about North Carolina. Ohio's set to do a redraw. Florida might do it too. Kansas is now considering. If it felt like it was overwhelming, it's because it is. And given that the Republicans are truly trying to do anything they can, they're arguing that the Voting Rights Act is unconstitutional to the United States Supreme Court because they feel as if the Supreme Court might be apathetic to their argument, right? Thinking about the way that they are looking at this and saying, sympathetic, rather, and thinking about the way that they have tried every maneuver possible to mitigate their losses in 2026 tells us the same story that we've known. Republicans expect to lose in 2026, and they are willing to do anything, and I mean anything, to ensure that they do not lose in 2026. And that includes even going to even the most random of states to say, we need an additional seat here. The thing that I think also hasn't really been reported on as to why this is being pushed forth by the governor, but also by the Republicans in the state legislature, is because the president of the Senate, Ty Masterson, he's been serving here since 2021. He's been in office since 2009. It isn't just that he has this undying loyalty to Donald Trump that he wants to push it forth through the state legislature. He has his own ulterior motives. Because all it takes is one quick Google search, Ty Masterson running for ... and his website comes up because he's running for governor. And the governor's race here is not as clear-cut as you might think. Democrats most recently won it in 2022 with Derek Schmidt, who's now in Congress, but the Democrats are the incumbents in this race. With an incumbent who's retiring, Laura Kelly has already endorsed a state senator for the race here, but this race across the board in 2026 is quite competitive. The former governor is running in this race. You have the Kansas Insurance Commissioner, the Secretary of State, a lot of people across the state. And if Ty Masterson can deliver this for Donald Trump, there's no doubt in his mind that Donald Trump makes an endorsement for him in the race. If the president of the Senate can do what none of these other Republicans are able to do, and that is help Donald Trump in the 2026 midterms, Donald Trump oftentimes rewards loyalty with loyalty. And obviously, there are many cases where that is not the case. But as it comes down to this most recent cycle, it absolutely is exactly what Ty Masterson is gunning for. And whether or not this actually goes through, because maybe he knows that the Kansas Republicans are going to hold off or the Supreme Court will shut it down, it seems to be a game, an intentional one, to get that Trump endorsement and boost his prospects at running for governor in Kansas. And it might very well work. because the governor's race is competitive more so on the primary side than it is in the general election. And given that almost everybody, save the few congressmen who are in this race that are not running in 2026 for governor, but instead are running for re-election, all of these declared candidates across the state are pretty notable. And it's going to be an extremely contentious primary. And a Trump endorsement could make all the difference. So, there's a lot fueling the reason why Kansas Republicans and why some at the very top want to see this happen so bad. But at the end of the day, they face very big obstacles, even in their own political party, by the Republicans that represent swing districts and a Kamala Harris County that, might be willing to elect more moderate Republicans. But the moment that they turn their backs on the voters that are swaying back and forth between Trump, Biden, Harris, might not reelect them if they greenlight and rubber stamp this new congressional map that might end up being struck down anyways. So they might just nip it in the bud. We'll see. Obviously, a lot of motivational factors on every end for this map to pass on the Republican side. It will be interesting to see if it does. But as it stands today, if Kansas Republicans are to follow through on this map, chances are they're going to fail. And chances are that either the Supreme Court with the Democratic working majority or the Kansas Republicans that are in swing districts hold out and shoot down the map. Either way, it doesn't look like this Kansas map is going to go through easily in 2026, if at all, for the upcoming midterm elections. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video for you to watch, and then a playlist for my 2026 House election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.